All right, guys, this car right here, okay, it could look like a shiny old car, sure, from the 30s, and it is, but this is a car of amazing history. This car has a history of family history. It has drag racing history, like we're talking trophy drag racing history. And then it has hot rod history more recently. This is Ed Smith's first documented race car from the late 1950s. It's a 1936 Ford, and I'm going to have the pleasure of bringing you Ed taking a drive and telling us a few of the stories of this exact car. He has never let go of this car. Doesn't look exactly the same, and we'll get into that too. It's got a different motor now, of course. It's probably had quite a few different engines in it. But we're going to bring you this story, and thank you for coming along, and we'll learn more about Ed Smith and his car.
The day of the Indianapolis race, we took the masking tape off of it and drove it to town.
Oh, did you?
With the blue paint.
And what year would have that been?
60.
60, okay.
1960s when that was. So I took a loop sticker off of it, and it was on top of the blue paint, and the loop sticker said 1960.
1960.
So I know it was 1960 when I painted it dark blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for a while we drove it when I drove it in high school.
Uh-huh.
And the picture I have in my high school there is when we backed up the sidewalk in front of the high school, because the high school is the best looking building in town.
Okay, tell me about the engine in your car here.
This is a Chevrolet small block, and it's stroked 350 to 383 cubic inches, and of course it's 700R overdrive transmission automatic, and we put the motor in with an aluminum radiator and a little healthy camshaft and some headers and a single carburetor, so it's easy to adjust. And then when I put the Firewall in it, you can buy new Firewalls where there's no holes in them or anything, and so that Firewall happened to be for a big block Chevy.
Okay.
So I can set the distributor back and move the motor back and still have plenty of fan clearance.
Right.
And I didn't want any holes in the new Firewall, so everything goes underneath the dash and goes back to the other side.
Okay. So why did you choose the small block versus the big block?
The big block would be way too heavy with the motor for the car, and on the front axle and stuff, things like that, because it's a Mustang front end in it. And it just makes it more difficult, and this is easy to work on, plenty of room.
And so who built this engine?
Well, I did.
No kidding.
Yeah. I built the whole car.
You built the whole car?
I built the whole car. So
yeah. That's wonderful.
I've had the body off the chassis and changed the whole frame with different reinforcements and structures on motor mounts, and then of course the Mustang front end axles and stuff, and shocks and sway bars and different things on it, and so it drives really nice. And it's not power steering. It is rack and pinion, and you don't need power steering on a light car like this.
Right. And again, when you have a small block, it's less weight over the wheels. Probably more fun to drive. Yeah. And when did you build this engine?
I built the engine probably 4 years ago.
Okay.
We started tearing the car apart about 4 years ago, and took the body off, and there was no rust in the body at all. Anyways, I never drove this car in the wintertime. Every winter, I've always had two cars my whole life. Or at least two cars,
right.
And maybe sometimes 8 or 9 or something, but I never drove this in the wintertime as long as I've owned it.
Right.
And the compression would be the standard 10-to-1 compression.
Right.
Maybe a 280-degree camshaft so it runs nice and has a little lumpy idle, so you have to have that for making a street rod. It has to make a little noise.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It
starts easy and runs good.
Yeah, so the goal on this thing, and again, this car is history for you personally. It's not just a car.
Yeah.
It's part of your history. So I guess you just wanted to make it easy to drive and fun to drive, right?
Yeah, fun to drive, and in the future, anybody can drive it. Again, I've only had the car 65 years or something. So.
That's incredible to have a car that long. That's a record in my book for me. I've not met anybody that's kept a car longer than that.
Well, usually you don't have too many friends that's this old.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, but I don't have their car this long. So it's easy to come up with that combination.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very honored to consider you a friend. So thank you, Ed. This is a lot of fun. I like this engine setup, and the way you've selected those headers look really great too. The way they just they fit in there just perfect.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to go for a little ride.
Yeah. I got the original hubcaps, so I had those too, and people would not have the original hubcaps even though they had the original car.
Right.
And especially if they did any modifications on it or anything.
So obviously this car was completely complete when you bought it, even if it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. The
in
fenders
perfect
were
shape.
wrinkled,
Okay.
and I bought, went up to Indiana to a furniture store, and I bought, and upstairs in the furniture store they didn't know, I bought 2 brand new fenders for the rear, a couple new grills for it.
Okay.
Original OEM stuff, and I bought those in probably before I painted it, so that would have been maybe in 1959. I bought the in this furniture store in Indiana. I bought the new fenders and a couple new grills for it. But these are new fenders on it now.
They look perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that engine sounds quite healthy.
We'll take some route on Grand Avenue.
Okay, that's great. A shift kit in that transmission, I'm thinking.
Yeah, we do, yeah, of course. Might squeal the tire a little bit.
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, I might if I...
It likes to grab really good. You have a nice roomy back seat if you want to bring some friends along.
Yeah, lots of friends, all the kids and whoever else dare might get in the back seat.
Right? Whoever would dare. Is that the original speedometer?
It is the original speedometer.
Look at that.
And then,
That's
but I
beautiful.
haven't sent it out and have it restored, and I could have it something restored and match the other gauges.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's nice
So,
to have that there, though.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And this was the which was the radio or an ashtray.
Oh, okay.
The options, yeah.
And
And the radio would have been here. It had 2 knobs on it.
Okay.
And then cords that go down to
Okay.
a box down there.
okay.
And then the antenna was the steel mesh, wire mesh in the ceiling, in the roof.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they worked in. So we're just developed a self-cleaning car in
Sure, what a great option.
1936, yes.
Well, you
If
know,
you could get the dirt out of your eyes for a while. So,
wow. Yeah, you're wearing your racing goggles just to get the vent going.
yeah, just to get the vent going, yeah.
Well, that was, well, back in the day, ventilation was, air conditioning wasn't around. So
Yeah, that's right,
ventilation
yeah.
was a big, important thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And since I've had it, I think when I was a senior in high school,
Uh-huh.
I went to school in Edgerton, Ohio. There was several factories around town. There's a big river went through Edgerton.
Okay.
And there was actually a canning factory where they canned corn and peas and beans, I think, for vegetable, for eating.
Okay.
Then there was a basket factory there that made wooden baskets down by the river there, where you could get the hot water to soften up the wood and make baskets for fruit baskets and stuff, and peach baskets and stuff.
Huh.
It was a big deal there in that little town. And after the basket factory closed up, then they moved into a polishing company, and they did chrome polishing.
Oh,
And so I had some of my kids in school, a couple of my friends in school, they could chrome stuff. So I would take all these moldings and all the window moldings here and this piece here, and I would send it to him, and he possibly, I didn't say anything, but he possibly put it in his lunchbox and take it down there and chrome it in the evenings or something.
It may not have shown up on the books.
Yeah, it might not, but
Might
that's
not.
how I got it chromed, and it's been chromed ever since.
Well, they still look great.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So were they originally chromed also?
No, they would have been painted.
Painted, okay.
Yeah.
So this is an upgrade,
Yeah.
Ed Smith only upgrade.
Yeah. With this light car and the Mustang front end, you don't need a big steering wheel. The
Right.
steering wheel would be like a couple inches bigger at least.
Now, do you drive this a lot?
I don't drive it that often, probably once or twice a month.
Okay.
I meet with some of my friends up for lunch on Tuesday nights, sometimes when we drive it up there, and I might drive it home. I might drive it to church sometimes on nice
Sure.
weather.
Yeah. How did you find this car in the first place?
My brother, my cousin's wife in Toledo, Ohio, she bought it and she drove it for 1 year. My brother bought it from her, I think for $150. And so he drove it for a year and he upgraded to a big old 52 Oldsmobile.
Okay.
And so I got it handed down and I paid him $150 or $175 for it.
Okay.
And,
So at that time it was just a few years old.
and that's why it's, that's how I got it. And I like the car so well. It's never sold it. I got rid of it. I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course that was the opportunity when he, whatever I was, 15 at the time, he upgraded.
Yeah.
So I got the car. There was no rust on the car or anything, but we had to do a lot of upgrades to it. I had one other one earlier than this. Was a 36 Ford that was I think it had been tipped over. So in those days, nobody did any body work. If you rolled a car over, you didn't fix it because it wasn't worth that $150 car. So
Right.
you would just automatically just junk it and go buy another car.
I see.
So when you did that, then this particular one had a V8 and standard shift, so I took the body and tore all the body off of it and cut the windshield off, and no fenders or anything. All I had was the dashboard, and I put a bus seat on it and put bigger tires on the back because it was a V8, and so that was about 14 years old when I did that. So we called that a farm tractor.
Okay.
So we had a little hitch on the back and we could pull farm wagons and stuff with it. If it was called a farm tractor. As a tractor, you didn't have to have a driver's license to drive it.
Okay.
So if we didn't have a driver's license to drive it, this supposedly 36 Ford real fast V8 with bigger 15-inch tires on the back and stuff was really fast for those days. And so with that, we didn't have to have a driver's license at 14, and so we could sneak it to town once in a while or drive it up and down the country roads and cause as much trouble as we could and race anybody that wanted to race. The newer guys like the Oldsmobiles, and I don't think the Oldsmobiles even could beat me in a drag race in those days.
No kidding.
Because
Well, you've taken the body off of it,
We took
right?
the body off. It didn't weigh anything. So that was basically the first car I think I bought and owned. But it was not a car. It was a farm tractor.
Okay. You won't call it a car, but you were racing at 14 years old. Well, it's a beautiful color. Do you happen to remember the name of the color?
I don't. It's a Ford truck, red.
Okay.
And I asked him one time for a paint code, and I think it wasn't a paint code. It was just a Ford truck number one red, I think, at the
Okay.
time. It was a brand new color when I chose it.
Okay, well, it sure has a nice metallic in it.
Yeah. I drove it was original car, original motor and transmission and stuff, and me and my friends used to go up to the lake swimming night after work, because we worked on a farm.
Okay.
So as soon as we got done doing the chores and stuff, we jumped in the car and drove up to this little lake up in Indiana. And we'd swim up there until 10, 11 o'clock at night. In the summertime, it's nice and cool. And we drove it up there quite often. And I remember one time when we wasn't much. A Ford motor wasn't available at that time.
Okay.
Like the 302, it was a bit earlier, bigger motor and stuff, and that wasn't the choice.
Right.
It was always the choice with Chevrolet motors. And
Okay.
I think there was 3 or 4 of us in the car. We were going down the main highway, and I was going wide open as fast as I go, and this gas truck with 2 trailers went and pulled out and went around me.
That wasn't going to work, was it?
It wasn't going to work. So maybe a couple days later, I saved up some money and got a hold of it, set up the J.C. Whitney in Chicago and got a Chevrolet adapter.
Okay.
And so
you could adapt the Chevy motor to the transmission?
Yeah, to the transmission, get rid of this old Ford motor, yeah.
So was that original Ford motor, I guess that was an early flathead?
It was an early 221 cubic inch flathead.
Okay.
One single carburetor, and
Yeah.
it didn't do much.
That's one of those in the 60 or 70 horsepower range or something?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
So it wasn't an 85 horse, it was less than that. So
Yeah.
anyways, that was then. So anyways, I couldn't find a Chevrolet motor then.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I found one in a junkyard that had just been rolled over in a 55 Chevrolet.
Uh-huh.
And he had a complete motor and transmission and everything.
Uh-huh.
This new 55 Chevrolet with a very few miles on it. And so I talked to him, and he wanted $150 for the motor and transmission.
Mm-hmm.
And that was way too much because at those days we worked maybe 45 hours a week and making $1, maybe $1 an hour or something.
Right.
So that was 3 weeks pay.
Yeah, a lot of money.
So that was way too much money. And so then I looked around, and I had a dear friend of mine, a high school friend that had a cousin that lived up in Indiana. So then we went up there one weekend to visit his cousin, and it was in the Amish area, and actually Shipshewana, Indiana, and the Amish men were making house trailers then. And one of them worked at a Chevy dealer. So I visited him, and he said, hey, we have a little stub-nose 55 Chevy truck that we pull house trailers with, brand new. Mm-hmm. And they wore the motor out, so they have that. They put a motor in it, and they have the old one.
Oh, okay.
So I could get the motor and the oil pan and cylinder heads and maybe the intake and the main part of the motor, because they put a whole motor in it.
Uh-huh.
So I think I bought that motor for I think $25 in pieces, all tore apart.
Yeah, okay.
So I took that home and rebuilt it, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a 265, and I bored it out to 283 and put flat top pistons in it and a little bit of a camshaft, and it was a Corvette camshaft, a real small one, and,
Mm-hmm.
and got a couple carburetors and put on it, and made my own headers and things, and then I started drag racing the car.
Oh.
So I have some pictures someplace of it when in Toledo. I raced it there quite often in maybe a D gas, a lower gas class,
Mm-hmm.
a small motor and a heavy car. And I raced it in Indiana and up in Michigan, Lansing, Michigan, drag strip, and when I was probably a senior in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the year after that.
Okay. And that was in this exact car?
In this car, yeah.
Wow.
In this exact
so
car,
this was
yeah.
your first drag racing car?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea
And
that.
I have the first trophy I still have it on my desk.
Okay.
I got that in Toledo Dragway, and it was an old airport. And the trophy says on it, Glass City, because Toledo was the glass capital for window glass and car glass company. And they made all the glass around, the sand around Toledo, I guess, off the Lake Erie.
Okay.
And they made glass. So that was the glass capital of the United States, I think.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
I still have that trophy, and
Very cool.
I had a lot of fun racing it, and then stopped racing it then when I shortly after when I guess I raced it when it was painted.
Uh-huh.
That was in '60,
Okay.
and so
So that was the beginning of your racing career, right
yeah,
there.
yeah. And we raced again. Racing career was the old farm tractor, because we wanted to race anything that come down the street, and black marks all over the road in front of our house. And
Okay.
So
So
I
let's
think
say the
that's
first documented racing may
was
have
this
been
car.
This car,
This
right?
absolutely was this car.
You're
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Wow,
So-
that's a great story.
so,
And
yeah.
it's I mean, how many people would still have that car? I mean, that's
Yeah,
what brings
yeah.
this car back around to the story of this
Yeah,
car.
yeah.
That you've kept it. It's been reformed a little bit, but
yeah.
it's still the same car.
Yeah. At the time, then I bought a '57 Chevrolet, a black two-door sedan, a nice car, V8 automatic and stuff. And I have some pictures somewhere that I towed this with a tow bar up to the races,
Okay.
up the drags, and I think some pictures of on an old wooden scale we weighed up to get in the gas class. And
Okay.
stuff. We towed it home again.
Right.
So.
Wow.
And when I moved to Arizona, I moved here in when I was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I lived here in Arizona for 1 year, and I went back home again and settled up my states and whatever I wanted to do. And I towed this car behind a 60 El Camino. I towed it back to Arizona.
Really?
That's where I got it back to Arizona. And I had an apartment over in 12th Street in Camelback and parked it behind the apartment for a while until I rented a house and I put it in the garage in the house. It's a 1936 Ford, a 68, model 68. That man was a four-door.
Okay.
And maybe with a humpback in the back with a Continental kit, spare tire on it and stuff. And
All right. So
this is one of the more expensive ones because the cheap model of this same car would have only had one tail light on it and it held the license plate on the tail light. And it wouldn't have had the right rear tail light because it wasn't necessary. They probably would have saved maybe $3 on the price of the car and $36 to add an additional right tail light on the fender.
interesting. So that was an option.
Option, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And now people may or may not know this the concept of Continental kit.
Well, you had someplace to put the spare tire.
Okay, and it
'Cause
kept it
wouldn't
from
go in
taking
the-
up room in the trunk.
Yes, it couldn't. Yeah, you could no place for it.
Okay.
Some of the humpback cars had a big trunk lid that went all from the rear bumper clear up to the width, and then you could put the spare tire on those.
Okay. So now we're seeing there's just a door on the top, really, of the trunk.
Yes, there's a door there. Now,
And now is that how it was in factory? That's
yeah,
the
it's
original?
all factory. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you show us how that works?
So yeah, it's just got latches here and they're locked, but I normally don't lock them.
Okay.
And it's got.
And then
sets
there's your
up and there's
space.
Space between the trunk and.
Yeah.
Let me get out of here.
And you snuck the battery back here.
I have the battery
That's
back
good.
there.
Tell me about this Continental kit.
You see them once in a while because this metal parts here, the cover is quite nice.
Yes.
And kind of classy.
Right.
It was the Continental kit become classy is maybe in the 50s, a 50 Cadillac or 51 Oldsmobile convertible or Pontiac 58 Pontiac with a Continental kit. That was everything.
Uh-huh.
That was class.
Right.
Expensive and stuff. So
Yeah.
And these time was just a spare tire.
Okay.
So this particular one has this cover over it, and a metal cover, and this is the original cover.
It is.
I've had it kept it because I kept everything.
You're right.
So with this one, the only tire would fit in it would be a 616 original tire.
Okay.
So I had quite a time. I couldn't, for a couple of years, I looked for any kind of a radio tire would fit this cover.
Right.
Not necessarily fix the car, but the cover. So I never found one. So I found a brand new 616 tire, and I mounted on an original tire wheel.
Okay.
So I mounted the original wheel on an adapter, put it on the original Continental kit, and got this cover to fit perfect.
Nice.
So it slaps underneath here a little bit and snaps around there.
And some people don't even realize the radial tires have been the only thing for so long.
Yes.
But those back in that day was a bias ply tire.
It was a bias tire, just a cheap tire.
Yeah, and they didn't last very long.
Didn't last very long, and they were hard riding.
Yeah.
They were a hard tire.
Yeah.
This had a little cover here.
Uh-huh.
This usually opens up, and there's a lock in here. So this cover is locked on here, so you can't steal it.
I see. Okay.
But I fastened it under here, so that's not my case. I put a little fastener in there so it don't open up.
Right.
The valve stem has to be right here, so you can check the air pressure.
Right.
The tire, make sure everything's okay. It's safety.
Oh, it looks really
a little
great.
Bumper would swoop down, so you can get the Continental, get the tire off of, and and the gas cap and the spare and the license plate holder.
Yeah, that's quite a setup because
That's
it's
all.
really doing three things, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the tail light, the license plate holder, and the fuel filler
yeah.
to the tank in the back.
Yeah.
So this is a 36. What do you like about the design?
36 was probably the prettiest one.
Okay.
Design worth, it was nice. The 35 was kind of a flat grill. And the 36, the first one was kind of a pointed, aerodynamic more. And it was a pretty car. Of all of them, the 36 was the prettiest one design-wise, and you don't appreciate it until you polish and wax it or something, how the curves on the whole car are designed.
Right.
And then the next year would have been a 40.
Okay.
The 40 was pretty car. So that's the choice right now, people. It's hard to find a 36 Ford. And the 36 Ford 3-window coupe is real expensive. And a lot of 5-window coupes But then there's a few four-doors and a few Phaetons. That would be a four-door convertible.
Oh, Phaeton, right.
Yeah, but it's all 36 Fords. And these were covers here with the horns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They had a hole in the end here through the grill, and you could put a crank in there and start it originally.
Okay. So was an electric starter an option even back then?
Yes, it was.
It was,
Of course,
okay.
it was. It had a battery, 12 volt, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, a starter became option in the Model T.
Okay.
Maybe in the 22s or 23 became an option, was a
That's
starter.
right, okay.
Electric starter. and
So
that's
even
the
though
first one.
starters have been for quite a few years, they still were accommodating a hand crank.
Yes.
Even
Well,
in 36.
Yeah, even in the Model T, I do a lot of research and stuff that the Model T guy bought a Model T says, I don't want any electronics.
Okay.
Don't tell me something with electronics. I got a crank and I can start it. He didn't want a starter. He demanded, he didn't.
They didn't trust it, did
He
they?
didn't trust the starter. Electronics, he didn't trust that at all.
Right.
So he could start it. And then later on, the Model T's made a casted in the block. You can actually put a starter on it, even though it didn't have one.
Okay.
You had that option of starter or not. Probably $1.50 or something.
Yeah.
You get a starter.
Right.
So then after what, everybody wanted starters then.
Yeah.
But you still crank them.
Yeah.
so,
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
So-
but the way the flow, the hood, the way you've got the grill and it
Yeah.
flows along the sides, you have these side
pointed, yeah.
venting.
Yeah.
It just looks really great.
Air goes in here and comes out here, so it cools
Yeah.
the engine quite a bit.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, Ed, you've taken an old car that has a very much historical significance, I would say.
Yeah.
Again, because it was a actual documented first racing car you had.
Yes.
And now it's a cruiser for you,
It's the cruiser.
and you can enjoy it with
Yeah.
family or friends
Yeah.
and still appreciate it's so comfortable and fun to
Yeah.
drive. I think you've done a great job, Ed.
And my family will appreciate it forever.
Yeah, it's going to stick
Yeah.
around, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll stick
It's
around.
part of your legacy.
I'm sure. They love it too.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the young kids love it, so it'll be around for another
For a long time.
80 years.
That's right. Well, thanks for sharing it with us,
okay,
Ed.
good.
This
Yeah.
is really great.